On today's show, we have Mike Piellucci, the editor of D Magazine Sports, here to talk about a feature about Clayton Kershaw. Could he come to the Rangers, and what are his expectations of the Texas Rangers in this 2023 season? All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 5 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. You can follow my guest, Mike Piellucci, at Mike Likes Sports, and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Before we get into today's show, Clayton Kershaw talk, Clayton Kershaw to Texas talk, and more, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Now, with all that mouthful done, joining me today is Mike Piellucci. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, brother. I feel very energized when I hear the open of the show. It's just very hard hitting, big beat, gets me ready. I am fired up. I was already fired up for baseball season, but now I'm like extra fired up, Bryce. Here with you. Let's chat.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they gave us a few different options when we were starting off the show of like, all right, here's these different little music sounds, whatever. I'm like, I don't know. This one feels the most Texas Rangery type of music that we have out there. And stuck with it ever since. Never second guessed. I'm like, you know what? This is it. I feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta stick with the girl that brought you there. This is what got you to the dance. You gotta stick with that.
That's true. It's true. We've been dancing for, this is now 5 seasons. Last Saturday was 4 years since Morgan and I recorded our first episode. So it's been a hot minute. Now we've finally got a half decent baseball team. One that, Clayton Kershaw, a personal favorite, might be thinking about joining. You wrote this beautiful, beautiful feature about Clayton Kershaw, the Dallas native, the hometown kid. People don't know this, but Clayton Kershaw is from Dallas. Did you know that, Mike?
I've never in my life heard that. No, it's the first time I learned it right in the story.
He's actually from Highland Park, and he and Matthew Stafford actually, they grew up together. They played football together. It's so wild. No one ever talks about this. Nobody has ever talked about this before.
No. Breaking news on the show in D Magazine. All of those things. Yeah.
Happy to have all of these scoops for us, but this was a very in-depth feature. Clayton Kershaw is kind of not necessarily, I would describe him as a reclusive guy, but just not necessarily the most like out there and on the town and in everybody's faces stuff. And this was pretty in depth, and I just want to know what your thoughts were talking to him and hearing about his life and about his career and everything you got into in this feature.
I think the biggest thing that stands out to me when you're around him is he is very straightforward. And look, the caveat is you never really know these guys. I don't know Clayton Kershaw. I'm not, I know the guy that I've spent time with, and, I've met his wife and spent time with her and talked to a lot of their friends. And I think I have a pretty good idea, but I don't totally know. But the thing that I'd heard going in was always, this dude is going to speak what's on his mind, and he is not going to sugarcoat much. He's going to tell you what he thinks, and not in a jerky way. I think he's a very warm, approachable dude, especially when he's not playing baseball. I always find it really fascinating how one of the things he's honest about is just like, we talked about how anxious the game still makes him about, when he started the All-Star game in LA last year, I remember people asking him afterwards, like, how was it? And he said, like, yeah, I actually had fun pitching while I was pitching tonight. Usually I just have fun afterwards when it's done. But like, I actually had a good time, So he's very open about how baseball can make him a little more intense than the normal dude that is Clayton Kershaw away from the game. But being around him, just him being pretty straightforward about what his life is like, about what retirement could look like, about the Texas Rangers. It was really refreshing. I felt like I was having a really authentic conversation with someone who, by all accounts, just I think enjoys playing baseball, but he's very much more of a husband and a father at this point and wants to help the community and just do a lot of things. And if he's pitching a few more years, or maybe he's pitching one more year, he doesn't even know yet, then that's cool too. That I think you could afford yourself the luxury of figuring out as you go when you are, I don't know, the best pitcher of maybe the last 50 years, give or take.
Basically, I mean, that's one of those things about him being intense on that. It reminds me of that's what you really look for in an ace, is like that's something that I feel like sets them apart, is just on game day, they're just like laser focused. Like, I am a different person than I am off the mound. And we've seen it with guys like Scherzer, with deGrom, with Verlander, like guys who are just like pretty affable and easy to get along with outside of their start day. But on their start day, do not talk. Don't even look at them. Don't even get near them.
I mean, there's a quote
about business.
Yeah, I mean, his childhood best friend was telling me about how, especially before he had kids, right? After he had kids, he mellowed out a bit. Before he had kids, it was don't even text him on game day. Don't do anything in his orbit on game day ever. Bad things happen if you try that. So yeah, he was the epitome of that dude.
Absolutely. I mean, it's made him one of the best pitchers in the history of the game. I mean, he's got a 75.9 career Baseball Reference for. I was looking up what he had done last year, and I mean, he had missed some time for the last couple of seasons. It's been a while since he's pitched 200 innings. It's actually been since 2015. But even the last couple of years, when he has been pitching in kind of limited outings, last year he was absolutely fantastic. He was deserving of the All-Star nod. 126 innings, 137 strikeouts, and his advanced numbers are just absolutely unreal. I mean, I keep seeing him losing velocity, and it doesn't matter. This guy is one of those brilliant pitchers who, I mean, the guys who have the elite stuff and can figure out how to pitch when the elite stuff isn't quite as jumping off the page. And that's one of the things that I think is really incredibly impressive about him.
Yeah, I mean, when he came in, what was the stereotype of him, right? Power lefty, big fastball, huge hook. That was his thing, the curveball. As he's gotten older, the slider's really his pitch now. Now he throws 91. He spams a bunch of sliders, but he knows how to locate. He knows how to pitch. And it's nice when you know how to locate, you know how to pitch in your Martin Perez. But when you already had that shelf of what you could do in Clayton Kershaw and your stuff was just all-time great stuff, and you know how to pitch, then you can get away with a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, on a per start basis, you are, I mean, obviously the Rangers employed Jacob deGrom, who is the king of the per start basis. But after that, Kershaw's right there in terms of, you're not going to get you're not going to get 170 innings. Right? You're not going to get 150 a lot of the time anymore. But those 20 some odd starts, they're going to be damn good starts. And LA, I mean, I think more than they have in a couple of years, the Dodgers are going to need that from him this year. I feel like the last couple, it was, and they still have Clayton Kershaw. They have Walker Buehler, and they have, Julio Urias. And, for a minute there, they had Scherzer, and, they have Clayton Kershaw. Well, now it's after Urias, I mean, Kershaw's their second best starter right now. So he's going to need to give them a lot. And he's still at that point where he's competitive enough to where that's what he wants. He wants that pressure. He wants that smoke, so to speak, and he can still bring it.
He could definitely bring the smoke, even though the fire on his fastball isn't there. He's still bringing all of that smoke. Coming up, we're going to look at what Clayton Kershaw could possibly look like in this Rangers rotation next year, what might be the competition with him in that, and why he might actually want to come back to Texas and play for a winning team that the Rangers have not been in quite a while. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Now, Clayton Kershaw to the Texas Rangers has been a pipe dream in my mind for as long as Clayton Kershaw has been Clayton Kershaw.
I mean, I got somebody in my mentions yesterday when I just announced that we were doing the cover, and he was just like, "Please don't talk about this anymore. I've been hurt too many times."
The last couple of years, it has really, really heated up, especially when we've seen the movement towards this being actually a good competitive team with resources actually being put into it and a pretty competitive product on the field. And I feel like this year I really allowed myself to hope just a little bit, especially after the Jacob deGrom news. I was like, oh no. I think actually he might have actually signed before then. And I was like, okay.
He signed fast. He signed super fast this year. Now, last year, the lockout year, he signed late. Right. Yeah. And the reason for that was that he was a lot more hurt than I think people realized, more than I realized. I knew he didn't pitch in the playoffs that year. due to elbow concerns. This is 21 that we're talking about. But he basically, I mean, everybody else, your average MLB player is like, there's a lockout. This sucks. What are we doing? He loved the lockout because he wasn't healthy at all. And so he's, it was probably until about March when he felt totally normal, but he was telling me about how if he was trying to wash his hair with his left arm or twisting a doorknob, his elbow was just killing him. And he was of the mindset where like, if I'm at all borderline, I'm not playing. So for him, he waited it out. And because the labor stoppage went into March, nobody knew, right? If this were a normal year and he's waiting it out and just saying, hey, maybe I'll be healthy, maybe I won't be, maybe I'm going to pitch, maybe to retire. It's a whole story because everybody else signs. He's the last guy out there. Everybody's wondering what Clayton Kershaw is going to do. But he had all this cloud cover. And so he was able to sign late last year. And how he's doing a lot better is he was one of the, I think he was maybe the first big time dude to sign this year. It was early November, probably a couple weeks after the World Series. He got it done real fast. So
yeah, he really took the air out of my sails on that one pretty quickly, and I appreciate him for doing that. I mean, Jacob deGrom is going to be pretty good. A nice consolation prize.
I hear he's decent. Yes.
Just seeing him on the mound in a Rangers uniform was absolutely fantastic. But this Rangers staff has really improved vastly from a year ago. I mean, they went out and signed. Well, technically they signed 4 pitchers. I guess they re-signed one and actually signed 3 different starting pitchers. And they also traded for Jake Odorizzi, which, I mean, who knows when we'll see him.
Sure.
Some very nice 6 starter depth, but they have a lot of arms in their minor league system in Owen White and Jack Leiter, and maybe eventually Kumar Rocker matriculates up there.
Dane Dunning. We know Dane Dunning could be a back end starter right now if they need him to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And having that depth and all these guys on different 1-year or 2-year deals. And I'm really curious as to what you think the odds are on this. Like, I mean, is it like, if there's a spot, then they're going to sign Clayton Kershaw, or just like, if Clayton Kershaw wants to come here, we will figure out what happens after that because it's Clayton Kershaw.
Yes. And a big part of that is also so the deal with him is that we talk about this in the story, but he's going to pitch for the Dodgers or he's going to pitch for the Rangers, and that is it. He doesn't want to do anything else. And he also only wants to go year by year. And I've always wondered what it would look like if an athlete did this, where that's what he's going to do. He's going to sign 1-year deals. So if he goes to the Rangers and says, I want to be here, and we saw him he's making 20 this year to stay in LA. Verlander got 40 annual leave for the next 2 to go to New York, right? So he's pitching below market value, and that's fine by him because he just wants to basically fit his lifestyle at this point with competing and playing. So if he goes to the Rangers and he says, listen, you're not going to pay market rate for me, and it's 1 year, and then we see what happens after that. Are they going to tell the best baseball player to ever come out of Dallas, maybe the best Dallas athlete of all time, Highland Park's favorite son? Are they going to tell him no because they have Martin Perez as their 5th starter? No, they're not. And that's assuming Martinez Perez is back, which we don't know. That's obviously a big open question. It doesn't matter who's there. That's the reality. We could sit here and we'll talk about why I think it's pretty likely that there's going to be room to get him or somebody else anyways. But if Clayton Kershaw tells you 1 year, sign me, they will print money and it will be a done deal. Doesn't matter who else is here.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, I don't know about Andrew. If Andrew Heaney picks up that 2nd-year option, maybe.
I'm an Andrew Heaney guy. I think he's super talented. But look, the reality is that even if, let's say, Perez comes back next year, you were talking about 3 guys that just signed in Eovaldi and Heaney and, of course, in Jacob deGrom. Not exactly the picture of health. I'm a big John Gray guy. I think John Gray, if he's healthy, is going to be fantastic this year. I would say John Gray, if he's healthy, is the 2nd best guy in this rotation. I believe in him that much.
Well, that's spicy.
If you look at him in June and July, when he came back for those early DL stints before things got hurt again late in the summer, when he was on, he was cooking. He was fantastic. He's really good. But again, this is a guy who, before he comes to Texas and Colorado, what was the rap at him? Well, we don't know how good he is, but we know he's going to make 30 starts a year. That was the John Gray promise. Well, he gets here. He didn't make it the 30 starts. He was on the DL 3 times last year. So there will be slots. There will be spots all year. I think Dane Dunning this year will make at least 15 starts because somebody's going to be on the DL at all times. And that's before the Martin Perez situation where nobody knows if he's back or not. So even organically, there will be room. You can sign a 6th starter with the current mix that they have, and that guy will get plenty of run because this is a group that is going to spend time on the injured list. I keep saying disabled list like it's 1994, but he's going to spend time on the injured list. And there's a reason that I think Texas signed 3 of them because they know that. They are very smartly going, you know what, if we are going to have risk, don't run away from risk, get more risk. That's been my position. Get more risk because they're not all going to be hurt at the same time in all likelihood. What will probably happen is there might be two of them hurt at the same time, but then the third one is ready to go and you're getting a really good pitcher. So if you bring in Clayton Kershaw, who, by the way, has needed IL stints the last several years, as Bryce pointed out, you're not expecting the 30 starts anyways. So 1 year, 20 some odd million, 20 starts of Clayton Kershaw, doesn't matter who else is here. They would do it if he wants to do it. And I think it is very much a deal where, he sort of framed it in the situation of like, I think he knows that he's got the leverage to where he can kind of, not necessarily pick the team because they've got to come to an arrangement. But if Clayton Kershaw directs his people to call the Dodgers and say, yes, I want to do one more year. Yeah, Mr. Dodger will get one more year. If Clayton Kershaw calls the Rangers, it says, guys, I really want to come home. Clayton Kershaw is going to come home. I think he knows. He's got enough, he's got enough skins to the wall, and he's picked the two teams where he's got a ton of ingrained leverage that he can make this happen if he wants this to happen. It's just, will he want it to happen? And frankly, if you'll read the story, they don't even know right now. I do believe that. I don't think he knows if he's going to pitch after this year. I definitely don't think he knows if he's going to pitch in LA or here. So this is really going to be a deal where we'll see what happens in, 8-ish months' time.
Yeah, and I am very much looking forward to that decision and just watching him on the mound because, he's been a guy who, he's one of those, like, if you're a neutral fan, just like, I want to see every Clayton Kershaw start because that guy is freaking amazing. Same, especially in 2014 when the Rangers just everything went to crap and that was his MVP season. I just like flip on MLB TV. It's like, there we go. Vin Scully calling a Clayton Kershaw game. Like, it does not get much better than that. But coming up, we're going to get into what it does get better than. This season getting better than last year, your expectations, and the reason why we actually have some for this Texas Rangers team this year. But first, this episode is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. Pro Baseball GM is the coolest game I've played in a long time, and I always thought I'd be a great Major League GM. Turns out, it's not really all that easy. If you had the same thought and you fantasize about managing your own franchise, go download Pro Baseball GM immediately. The game lets you manage every strategic aspect of the franchise, play through seasons, leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build historic dynasty, just like Clayton Kershaw has been a part of with the Dodgers. If you want to go channel your inner Chris Young and go try and hire your equivalent of a Clayton Kershaw or a Jacob deGrom or a Corey Seager, this is a challenging, realistic game world that you can go do that in. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Rangers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just go to probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. Now, unlike my Pro Baseball GM dynasty, this team is actually going to be good this year and has a much better GM at the helm than my own team on that game. But we are finally having some expectations for the Texas Rangers this year. And what about this team? What about this offseason has made you actually pleasantly optimistic for this season? And what does optimism for you look like?
I think we'll do the second one first. I think optimism is they're in a race through this season and they're in the wild card hunt. The AL West is rough. The Astros are the defending World Series champions. They, even without Justin Verlander, are going to be really good. Seattle's rotation is super deep. They have Dominican Mike Trout and Julio Rodriguez. They added Teoscar Hernandez, who's, to me, one of the most underrated middle-of-the-order hitters in baseball. Anaheim, and they will always be Anaheim because they pay their taxes in Orange County, guys. They're not Los Angeles. Anaheim has the two best players maybe on the planet still. You might have watched the World Baseball Classic. Even if the infrastructure of that team is a disaster, they will not be easy. So that's tough. I think my optimism comes from two places. One is this rotation, right? Because as you pointed out, there is so much depth that even if people get hurt, and even if for the umpteenth year in a row, the Rangers don't actually develop any of these young starters to do much, it still can't be that bad. It's going to be a pretty good rotation because that's what happens when you spend money like you're in a top 5 media market. Wild concept. Wild. And the second aspect of this is the infield. Marcus Semien, after the first month and a half of the season, was Marcus Semien. Corey Seager, I don't know how often you've gone over this in the show, but Corey Seager was the least lucky hitter in baseball last year.
Yep.
There was no shift anymore. Corey Seager, by rights, if you go look at XWOBA, was the 9th best hitter in baseball last year. Now there's no shift. Now he'll have more batting average of balls in play. I think Corey Seager is going to be incredible this year, right? Incredible. You are talking, Bryce Patrick, to the charter member of the Nathaniel Lowe Appreciation Society. It has been the drum I have been banging for years. And business, Bryce, is wonderful for the Nathaniel Lowe Appreciation Society.
I was on the other side when they first traded for him, and I have been banging the I am so dumb. I was so wrong drum for the last
Frankly,
year and a half.
you should have had me on last year for my victory lap because
I should have. Here, take your victory lap, man.
I mean, now look, like, I don't think he was that good last year, right? I don't think this is a dude who's running a 140 WRC plus year after year. But he is, I think, pretty clearly, a top 10-ish, give or take, first baseman. Maybe I'm being a little uncharitable. I'm talking offensively here. Defensively, he's a disaster. I frankly don't care a whole lot about first base defense. If you're hitting, even in a defensive infield that it seems a little questionable, and I'm putting that mildly, I don't care. If you were hitting as a first baseman, especially from the left side of that platoon split, especially with this team and its track record of developing first baseman post Rafael Palmeiro, basically.
Hey, you mean post Mitch Moreland? I will not have him disrespected. I have outside of you, I have a signed Mitch Moreland baseball.
Listen, Mitch did yeoman's work, and Jamie Newberg did a lovely tribute to Mitch on D Magazine a couple weeks ago. So
mad respect for that.
Yeah, so Mitch was a solid piece, but Nathaniel Lowe is a lot more than a solid piece, right? Jonah Heim, horrible batting average luck post August. If you look at Jonah Heim's BABIP, it's comically low. Like, it was in the 100s. This is a guy who is not going to be an offensive force at the plate, but I think he could be a league average offensive catcher, and combine that with a really good glove. They're also getting Mitch Garver back. If Mitch Garver's healthy, Mitch Garver is a hell of a hitter from the right side as a catcher. Josh Young, I'm a little more skeptical than others are. I'm not. I know this is offending your Texas sensibilities. I know. Look, I don't think there's a world in which Josh Young isn't a solid major league player. I question a bit. They comes back from the shoulder injury last year, and it's all power, no plate discipline, which is a pretty far departure from what he had been through the minors. I wonder if we are going to be able to marry those two approaches, or which one he shifts more toward. But either one leaves a little bit to be desired from a guy.
But I've seen him do the best of both worlds since that kid was 19 in person. I one of my few scouting wins was seeing him and Shea Langoliers in one of their first series in Big 12 play as they were both freshmen. I'm like, both those guys are going to be big leaguers one day. And
I think he's definitely a big leaguer.
Yeah.
And listen. All he has to be is a league average third baseman, and that's an upgrade over what they've had, right? So this is a top 3 or 4 infield in baseball easily. So you have that, you have the rotation. That to me is enough to deal with an outfield that frankly isn't very talented, and a bullpen the
Adolis Garcia and Robbie Grossman shade here. I did not expect.
You're talking to a man who did write a column that was the whole thrust for last year was I've given up trying to understand Adolis Garcia. And I don't get it. I don't understand it. It has worked. I do think Adolis Garcia is probably on a really good team, your third best outfielder, or maybe even your fourth best outfielder as opposed to your best outfielder.
He's a 3.5 WAR player for the last 2 years.
I know, but look, there's a lot of, and what it really is just it's extremes. It's a lot of highs and it's a lot of lows, and that's not my favorite archetype. I'm not a big fan of the non-plate disciplined guys who are not steady hitters, even if the defense and right is great, even if the arm is obviously otherworldly. But you can't consistently depend on him. There are stretches when he will carry the lineup, but there are stretches when he'll be gone for 3 weeks. And it's just I don't love that in a world in which, forget when Leody Taveras is coming back. I feel like so much of the discourse lately has been, well, Leody Taveras will be back soon. Obliques might not be that bad, which one, oblique injuries always linger.
They always are.
Always. 2, are we sure Leody Taveras is that great? I don't know.
Offensively, no, but defensively, yes. And I think, remember, Leonys Martin had a bunch of 3.5, 4 WAR seasons as a guy who was swinging basically a paper stick at the plate. And I think Leody's a little bit better than that, but he's also every bit as good defensively as Leonys was. And I think that we because center field defense is so hard to quantify and appreciate, it's really an underrated thing to have someone that is at the top echelon of center field defenders. And that's what Leody is, and that's what his entire value is based on.
Sure, and I do think there could be growth of the bat, right? Keith Law talked about it, and Keith Law put him as one of his breakout guys this year, and Keith Law's hit rate is pretty high on those. That being said, even if you buy that this is a guy who could be a 3+ win player if you give him a full season's worth of plate appearances, and we're giving Adolis Garcia that that sort of respect in no small part due to defensive value, a certain point, you need someone in that outfield to hit, especially when Jonah Heim's value, even if I believe in the bat more than other people might, Jonah Heim's never going to be a slugger or a catcher, and this is, you can't sit here and say, well, a third of this lineup, as far as the middle infield and Nathaniel Lowe can really rake, it'll be fine. No, they need to find offensive contributors somewhere else. And it's going to be an uphill battle. The fact that Robbie Grossman might play every day in left field is sort of shocking to me, because this is a guy who crushes lefties, not so much righties. So the outfield gives me some concern. The bullpen gives me all sorts of concern, but the difference is that there's a lot of upside with the bullpen. The bullpen's going to be fun as hell. Jamie Newberg and I did a combo piece last week over at Strong Side, which is the name of our sports vertical at D. And we just, we have these from time to time. It's a nice little baseball conversation. And I said, look, and I stand by this, I trust exactly one person in this bullpen right now, which is Brock Burke. I don't trust anybody else but Brock Burke right now.
And the fact that if you had told us that a year ago,
I know.
What is going on with this
right?
bullpen?
but a lot of times, and we've seen a lot of bad bullpens in this city, right? Yes. But a lot of time, bad bullpens are synonymous with boring bullpens. This bullpen is going to be really fun, because you can sell me on, I don't know, as many as 5 other guys being really good. And I would bet before the end of the year, a couple of these guys will emerge, right? Like Taylor Hearn, once he shifted to the bullpen last year, those 40 innings, pretty damn solid.
Yep.
I'm a Taylor Hearn believer in that. I bet this is closer to who he is than he's not, but it's been 40 innings. He didn't look great in the rotation. You got to see it to believe it for a longer period. You could sell yourself on Jonathan Hernandez with the command post Tommy John. You could sell yourself on Joe Barlow when he comes back up with this new pitch that he has. Maybe I'm selling. My point is that the possibilities exist. Jose Leclerc. Maybe people will talk themselves into Jose Leclerc for the 70th consecutive year. I don't know. I can't do that emotionally.
He was fine last year. Him and
Sure.
Hernandez were pretty good last year.
Listen, if you want to talk yourself into Jose Leclerc, rock of the bullpen, model of stability, Bryce, this is your emotional health, not mine. Okay, you do you.
I'm trying to make up for the many, many doubts that I had on him when I saw him so many times in Frisco. I was like, I don't get it. I don't get the deal with this guy. I don't get it. And then he comes out and has those flashes. We're like, okay, well, all right, yeah, maybe the scouts are a little bit smarter than me.
And all of that is before Cole Reagans, who of course is the story of camp. And it seems like the early indications are he'd come out of the bullpen again, which I really want to see him in the big club soon, just because when was the last time you've seen a team with 4 lefties out of the pen? But that seems like that's going to happen, because Will Smith is probably going to be around. So my point is that I bet by, circle late summer, they're going to have 2 or 3 of these dudes who figure it out, and it's going to be really exciting. The question is just going to be which of these guys do that, and how many games do you blow in April and May and early June when you're figuring out who you can trust and who you can't. I don't know. But I think that rotation is going to be really good if they're healthy, or just healthy most of the time. That infield is really good. They will at some point have the bullpen arms. And the outfield, if nothing else, right now is not worse than it was last year. And they have a ton of depth on that farm. And they have to make trades. They're going to hit a 40-man roster crunch sooner or later. They have to do something.
They're already there. They lost Mason Englert. That's a big loss.
They probably could have kept him in lieu of some of their other choices. But the fact that they were forced into any sort of choice proves your point, right? So they're going to do something before the deadline. They've been quiet. They've been loud in the winter and quiet in the summer. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. They're going to do something. They have all that prospect depth. So if you add that all together, do I think this is a World Series ready team? Absolutely not. Do I think this is a team that will keep this interesting all year long? Yeah, I do. I do think that. And that's a hell of a lot better than what it's been the last several years.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And honestly, that's about where I am with this team. It's I am optimistic. My expectations are maybe a little higher than reasonably they should be. But at the end of the day, I just want a team with a winning record. I want a team that does not make me want to cry and scream and throw things because they're so terrible and boring at the end of the year. If they make me want to do that, it'll be because they're losing games and they are, in the mix of it. And I can live with that, because it's been so long since we've had that in Texas, or at least in Arlington.
No, for sure. And I think the other thing that you want to see along the way is at a certain point, look, my whole philosophy has very much been they should have done an actual rebuild, right? That's not what Ray Davis wants. So they're not going to do that. Okay, fine. I've always preached no half measures. And to their credit, they've spent a lot of money these last 2 years. But it's not like they've sold off the entire farm. And I don't think you have to go full Dombrowski to win, but they've kept a lot of these prospects around. If you're going to keep these prospects, and they're probably to still keep a lot more than they trade in terms of their upper crust, because they just have the depth, They got to develop some of these guys. At a certain point, it's all well and good when we sit here and say, look at the farm system, look how exciting this is. They have not developed meaningful major league contributors in a long time. So
since Joey Gallo.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess, do you want to give them the win on Adolis Garcia or not? I don't know.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Sure. I'm there, man. I'm there.
Sure. Well, I mean, in terms of, obviously he's a good player. He's a good piece. Do you give him credit for a 29-year-old succeeding? Was this their developmental thing, or was this just, we're awful, we're going to let him play, and this was already in there? I don't know. That's a semantic game.
I give it credit to the hitting coaches, because I really believe in the hitting coaches. I think they did a good job of helping Nathaniel Lowe unlock that next level. I think they did a good job of turning Adolis Garcia into what he is, and I think they also kind of helped flip that switch with Jonah Heim to make him be what he was in the first half. So I'm high on them. I wish they could have done that with Willie Calhoun, but I think the Rangers already broken him long before this hitting coaching staff got here.
Yeah, that's its own conversation. The point is, they've got to get some developmental wins internally. No team is going to do this entirely from the outside. Some of these guys, for all of these pitchers they developed, even the Rangers, they have drafted so many arms. One or two of them have to be good in that rotation. At some point, the odds dictate and the capital dictates one or two of them is going to be good. Josh Young, if Josh Young isn't a hitter, maybe Evan Carter is. Ideally both, but they've got to get some wins. It's nice that they rebuilt a barren system and are just teeming with depth, but it's only going to matter so much if you don't develop some of them for yourself on affordable, cheap contracts, because even Ray Davis with the spending spree is going to have his limits.
That he is. And this team might have their limits this year, but I am very excited that they were unlimited in their checkbook the last couple of off seasons, and maybe even next season, to bring back old Clayton Kershaw back home to Dallas. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can the fine folks listening and watching on YouTube find you and all of your good work?
Well, so at Mike Lex Sports on Twitter, we are D Magazine. You go to D Magazine, you click the little sports tab, it's there. Cover of our April issue, Clayton Kershaw. We've been talking about it on newsstands on the 30th, 2 days from now, or I guess one day, because this will be posted Wednesday. So tomorrow, go out to your local grocery store, go get it. Or better yet, if you subscribe, not only will you get the magazine in the mail, but you can get, the minute you subscribe, if you're not already a subscriber, we'll get you a link to the PDF. You can read it online right away. So
beautiful.
Go make that happen.
Absolutely. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Y'all go check it out. Go buy your magazine, get your subscriptions, and go read about Dallas's greatest athlete who may just be coming home to Texas. We don't know yet, but we will be excited to find out. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and for Mike for joining me. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.